Remember the Hebrew language has no future tense, right? I told you that? Okay, Middle Eastern peasants and all people there, and all peasants of all times, generally do not see the future as we see future. They are so intensely oriented with the present, they don't care about the future. They're too busy scratching out a survival to care about the future. And what is Ahaz's problem? Is Ahaz's problem something 700 years into the future? Ahaz is the king of Judah, is quaking in fear because his city is under siege because of an alliance of the northern kingdom coming at him with the king of Aram coming at him. Israel and Syria. That's his here and now. He's already made a bond with Assyria, the Assyrian Empire, and he's still not out of the woods yet. So what kind of a message does Ahaz need? Does he need Ahaz, let me tell you about something 700 years from now. Is that going to help him? Is that good news for Ahaz? He needs a message for the here and now, Jack. So what's he going to get? Imagine Isaiah comes over to Ahaz and he says to him, "Hang tough, buddy. Listen, let me put on my Nostradamus time-traveling binoculars and look and see if there's going to be a solution. 400 years, 500 years from now, 600 years from now. Woo! I'm looking 700 years from now. I see Jesus coming up out of the Virgin Mary. Hallelujah! This is great." What do you think Ahaz would say? He's scared to death about his situation in his time. 733 BCE. He's going to say to such a message if Isaiah gave it to him, 700 years, I don't give a crap about something 700 years from now. 700 years from now, I'm not going to be around. My children aren't going to be around. I don't need a nonsense message like that. Get lost. I need something for the here and now.
Yeah, but Matthew must have known, Matthew was a man of his time, right? So he understands when that happened. Why is he using it then?
I'm getting there. Okay. That's good. I'm getting there. This is the question that our brother asked right here, and I'm going to get there. Let's not, but one thing we want to do right away, Mario, is eliminate the foolish idea that what you see on the screen is the message that Ahaz is giving. That Isaiah is giving to Ahaz, or God is giving Ahaz through Isaiah. That's not the message. Okay, y'all see that? Okay, that's not the message. Please. Try to understand that. Okay, so that's the first thing. Instead, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 13 goes something like this. Isaiah says to Ahaz, "Look, man, what did you do to your son? You burned him to false gods. You're sitting on the throne of David. Where's the succession? Remember, I promised you the succession was going to last forever. You know what you did? You ruined it. But I got good news for you, imbecile. Your wife is pregnant. You the last one to find out? Huh? You're the idiot? Okay, well, your wife is pregnant. And God made it a son. You should not have gone to Assyria. I had your back. And look what you've done. You've shamed me." This more or less is the message of the prophet. Not something bizarre about 700 years into the future.
Let's read it again.
So looking at the text, Isaiah 7 verse 14. "Therefore the Lord himself will give you, Ahaz, a sign. The young woman pregnant, and the young woman of childbearing age, pregnant and about to bear a son, shall name him Emmanuel." You shall name him Emmanuel. "Curds and honey he will eat so that he may learn to reject evil and choose good. For before the child learns to reject evil and choose good, the land of those two kings whom you dread shall be deserted." Question. More or less, when does a boy know when to morally decide things, to choose good and avoid evil?
Around 14.
Says 14. Who else?
12.
Okay, 12. Who else? When do we start giving confessions to kids?
7.
7. That would be a Western answer,
Yeah.
but 12 is the right answer in the Middle East.
Puberty? Is it puberty?
It's when you start, when a male starts hitting puberty, he has to be dragged away from the world of women. When did the precocious Luke and Jesus get lost in the temple?
12.
Right. So let's do a little math. Subtract 12 from 733 BCE. What do you have? No. 721 BCE. as in 721 BC when the Assyrian Empire destroys Samaria and the northern kingdom. Then his son, Emmanuel, which is really King Hezekiah, the heir, will be able to see the difference between good and bad. When that kid gets to be that age, he's going to know that Assyria is coming for Judah next. There's nobody to buffer in the way. So Isaiah is saying that by the time the boy grows to an age to know the difference between good and bad, something Ahaz, the shameful idiot, apparently never learned, the empire you went out and sucked up to is coming for you. That's the message. Wow. He shall eat curds and honey. Okay, is that good news or bad news? Well, look, Dr. Pilch got asked this question, and he said, yeah, I think it sounds good with little Chardonnay, curds and honey. Yeah. Goes good. If you're well-fed, that is. If you're well-fed, curds and honey is an elegant snack. But what happens if you are in times of famine and scarcity caused by war? And curds and honey, if that's all you got, is keeping you alive. So again, this is ambiguous. It all depends on the situation. Curds and honey might be good news, might be bad news. And that's how the prophets are. What we're trying to point out here to you is that the prophets always use ambiguity. It's never very clear what they're saying. It's always easy to make mistakes in understanding their message. The prophets are generally deliberately ambiguous. What do you see there?
I play the saxophone.
I said, but yeah, and a woman.
Or a woman.
Also.
Which is it? That's how it is with prophets. Continuing, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 20. On that day, the Lord shall shave with the razor hired from across the river, the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet. It shall also shave off the beard. Now, Americans read that, okay, how is that bad? Is that bad? Shave off the feet? Shave off the hair? Shave off the beard? Maybe that's a good thing. Some of the women here might think, well, it's good. They're going to get their beard shaved. That's pretty positive. Well, long after Ahaz, in the time of his ancestor David, King David sent, long before Ahaz, in the time of his ancestor David, King David sent emissaries to enemies to make friends. And they humiliatingly hazed and shamed the messengers and David by proxy, because in this world a man's emissaries are to be treated as the man himself. They cut the man's skirts so as to expose their genitals. Then they shaved off half their beards. Very humiliating. So that shaving reference is the Assyrian emperor is going to do this to you, King Ahaz. So if God's going to shave head and beard, that means he's going to do something shameful to Judah, something shameful to King Ahaz. Assyria is going to do something shameful. Look again at the verse. On that day, the Lord shall shave with the razor hired from across the river, the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet. Question, does anyone have hair on their feet? Like a lot of hair?
No, I've never seen that before.
Right, but if you go up the anatomy, you might find some hair.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah! Shinola! Feet often in the Bible is a euphemism for the male genitals.
Isn't that so?
The Bible doesn't say something like that. Oh, plenty of places it does. Plenty of places. So let's bring all this back to Matthew, reach our conclusion here. It's a tale of terror. What we're given in this wonderful Christmas story is, maybe it's not so wonderful Christmas story, it's actually a very challenging story. It's a very troubling story about Jesus' origins. It's a tale of terror that Matthew is telling us about Mary. It's a very painful story to listen to. It's not really a pleasant story at all. What a terrible start in life the Matthean Jesus is getting at the beginning. Everybody knows Joseph is not the father, but Joseph decides to lump it and to keep him. As long as Joseph's alive, nobody's going to dispute that claim. Once Joseph's dead, what do you think they're going to teach, how they're going to treat this kid in the village? Well, no, it's too late to do that. They're just going to remember him as, the bastard, right? So in order to help his Mediterranean readers stuck in their Mediterranean horror, the Mediterranean author of the text we call Matthew gives a little help. He splits the story in half. Into the split, he puts the reference to Isaiah chapter 7. And he gives you this whole thing here. It's not that Isaiah, living back in 733 BC, put on a magical pair of binoculars from Nostradamus and looked into the future 700 years, seeing the Virgin Mary and the virginal conception of Jesus. The prophet Isaiah around 733 BC declares that before a pregnant girl's son is about 12 years old, that's Hezekiah, the heir of Ahaz, King Ahaz of Judah will be devastated and he will be shamed. When this occurs, the king will acknowledge in shame, indeed, God is with us, Emmanuel. How about that? For Matthew, people in his time, Marco, will also realize that in this shameful time where Rome occupies us, that God is also with us in the healing ministry of Jesus. What Matthew is saying is, you know what? This is all really part of God's plan. That's why he does this and sticks in a Holy Spirit. And to cement his case, Matthew begins his gospel with a genealogy, taking up the first 17 verses. He tells his audience something special in verse 17. Thus, the total number of generations from Abraham to David is 14 generations. From David to the Babylonian exile, 14 generations. From the Babylonian exile to the Messiah, 14 generations. Why 14? We've talked about this before. 14 means David, right? And it means his honor, because the name David is 14 in gematria. If you read that, clearly you should be able to see 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. This is very arbitrary. It's artificial. It's a made-up genealogy. 14, 14, 14. It didn't really happen that way. But that's okay, because biblical genealogies do not need to be factual. The only way you got a genealogy in the ancient world is if you died and became famous. If you didn't die and became famous, the only thing you got was forgotten. You didn't get a genealogy written. Once Jesus died and was raised beyond Skyvault, and this was communicated to his followers, I think that would count as being famous, don't you? So it's time to give him a childhood. It's time to give him a genealogy that explains his honor. So what Matthew does is he tells us the story of Jesus' troubling origins, but then the author says, hey, don't sweat it, because he comes from the line of David. See? And not only does the Hebrew language not have vowels, but it also doesn't have numbers. Ancient Israelites don't have spare alphabets like we do, hanging around to be our number system. So their alphabet has to do double work as numbers. So take the name David, Dalet, Wav, Dalet, that's DWD or DVD in Hebrew. DVD is 4 plus 6 plus 4, that equals 14. So David's name equals a gematria of 14. So Matthew is saying, in effect, ain't I clever? Look what I did. I put together this nice made-up genealogy showing that Jesus comes from David's line, and I made it all very impressive. I hope I've done this work good by putting all this 14 stuff together, because that's what David's name equals up to. And Jesus basically has the honor of David and the Davidic kingdom, and everything's good. You don't have to worry about the fact that he was born under dubious circumstances.